Hey, everybody. Derek Maines here with the breakdown. This week, I want to introduce you to an old friend. I think it's probably been 15 years, Kelly, since we first met many moons ago. I think it was around 2007, 2008, which can you believe is 15 years? But Kelly is with OnTracksys, and we wanted to chat today about materials management, supply chain, those kind of things. You and I, Kelly, have been talking about this for a long time, all the challenges that are going along with the supply chain right now. But wanted to introduce you and talk a little bit about this because it's a really relevant topic, and it's something that everybody's struggling with. And maybe they don't need to struggle as much. Maybe we can solve the world's issues right here. But welcome, Kelly.
Hey, thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
Absolutely. it. You're in Florida, right?
I am. South Florida. Yeah. So I'm in Palm City,
okay.
A little bit north of Jupiter on the East Coast.
Nice. Very cool. So you've had a background in military, right? Is where you came from.
I do. So I spent almost a decade in the Navy, special operaes, jumping out of planes and diving, blowing up stuff.
Played with dolphins too, right?
Long time ago. It feels like almost, I'm a relic at this point. Yeah.
I always like to see your pictures of the dolphins because you did some cool work with dolphins too, right?
Yeah, that was definitely the high point of my tenure in the military.
The animals were the high point. I can say the same thing about my life at home too. Coming home to the dog is like that's the best part of the day. But let's talk a little bit about OnTracksys and what you do, because we're in similar fields in the sense that I'm doing a lot of like organizational kind of stuff, trying to help companies figure out how to use use systems to replace people. And a lot of times we talk, every week or so, and we're talking about all of the challenges that we're experiencing out there. So what does OnTracksys do? And, what are the type of clients you work with, those kind of things? Maybe give us a little bit of the background.
Yeah. So we're an 8-year-old company. We're a service disabled veteran owned company. We specialize in materials management and other related supply chain services for the construction and energy sector.
Okay.
So all of our clients are in that sector, and primarily and almost exclusively, we focus on capital projects where a project pops up. Either it's a new transmission line, it could be a renewable site, but that's really where we live.
And so what are the services you guys provide in that? I know we talk a lot about materials management, but I don't know exactly what you guys do. So maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, we're really an end-to-end supply chain service company. So anything that you might associate with supply chain, whether that be a buyer, expediter, material manager, material coordinator, schedulers, contract managers, the entire suite. So we're not project managers, we're not engineers, but we occupy that commercial space, and we try to bring everything together.
Nice. So, so it's not project. So there's project managers that the client has, but you're providing sort of that back end and the resources for them. Is that right?
Yeah, we support the project manager. So, we try to be the right hand, the right hand of the project manager, making sure that the parts that are ordered, whether we're ordering or someone else is ordering, end up, where they need to be on the project site. Oftentimes in that environment, which isn't a real controlled environment in capital projects, because, oftentimes the processes are not well developed. It's like, hey, we're going to build something, and then you have to figure out how to do it. So, those purchase orders get cut. We hope the parts show up on time, but as you well know, sometimes they don't, and that's where we come in.
So how has your business changed since the pandemic? I can imagine that things have been really different, because before it was relatively, I just got off a call earlier today and the guy's like, look, he's trying to fill a gap. He's looking at different segments of industries and realizing the pieces they're missing. Then he's actually spooling up manufacturing to try to compete with the big manufacturers by filling the gap, right? When a product's back ordered by 6 months, he was saying that this one specific screw that they use in commercial applications is currently 6 months back ordered. And he's like, I'm going to go to China and spool up a factory to make these.
Exactly. You're exactly right. All the lead times are just crazy right now. So it takes a lot more forward planning, and then to get your orders in on time. Sometimes well in advance of engineering, and then a lot of diligence throughout that lead time period to continue to touch base with your suppliers to make sure, they're staying on track.
Yeah. So how do you do that before engineering? I mean, is it really about estimating materials now less than it was, a couple of years ago? People would be, a lean guy like me would be like, come on, don't order the materials till you know exactly how much you need and be very, very close with your variances. And now I throw all that advice out the window because it's not applicable in this market.
No, you're right. Yeah. So, fortunately in my industry, it's ruled and governed by standards.
Okay.
So, the type of material we use and, the configurations are fairly consistent and well-known, well-defined. The supply base is well-known and defined for the most part. So, if you get to a 30%, engineering, sometimes you can get your long lead items, ordered well in advance of IFC. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. What's your prediction here? Where do you see things going?
I was thinking about that earlier today, and I really don't know. I see, every now and again, you see a glimmer of hope out there. But the next day, the headlines would tell you something different. So at this point, I really don't know.
It's funny. I was at a lunch with a business advisor friend of mine who works with 100 plus companies, and he's always been a big fan of 5-year plans. Mm-hmm. And now we talked at lunch about 30-day plans. We talked about 45-day plans, 90-day plans, like 90 days being the farthest out anybody can even consider thinking about anymore. And I think that really changes your strategy, right? Because we're so used to developing a plan and then executing on that. And now all of a sudden we have to be so much more cautious because the situation changes very, very quickly. I mean, who really right now wants to be in the fortune telling game? Nobody does, because you're just wrong. I mean, You're just going to be wrong with whatever it is. Who knows if it's another variant of this or if it's a war in Russia? I mean, there's so many different things right now that are affecting things. So Kelly, from OnTrax's perspective, a company, somebody that's working with you, what are they looking at? Are you able to help in that regard? Is that where you really come in and provide that expertise of a little bit more strategic thinking around it, or is it more of the planning and those kind of pieces?
Yeah, and we're really a process-driven company. In a new engagement, we always start with understanding the client business requirements and doing a detailed process map, and then doing an overlay of our technology on top of that process map to fill in gaps. And so communication is really key right now. It's a much overused phrase, but when you're dealing on a large capital project, real-time communication, keeping everybody informed of what's going on with regards to materials can make a big difference on whether you blow your budget or not. So we put systems in place and technology in place to keep that project manager informed. So if there is a hiccup, an unavoidable hiccup with materials, then they can, or the construction manager, they can make a decision to go non-linear in their plans and keep things moving forward.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that process map piece, it's something that I'm doing a lot of work on right now. And it's one of the reasons I had that lunch that I had today with this guy who does a lot of consulting and works with a lot of businesses. Is I'm like, look, where's the real opportunity in the market? For the services that guys like you and I provide. And for the most part, it's about process. It is about having the hardest thing to do is to analyze your own process, because for the most part, you're going to assume things that are not true. Having somebody third party that comes in and looks at it and lays it out and defines it and puts it on a piece of paper. I just did some process mapping for a client earlier this week. And when we laid the process out and we color coded it and we said, these are the things that software is doing, these are the things that we're doing manually, we actually laughed after we opened it up, because I laid it all out. I put it all together the exact way that we knew that they do it. And we looked at it and we're like, here's the pieces where we're using software. Here's the pieces that we're doing it manually. So we've spent, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars for this software. And 90% of the steps that we take are outside of the software. Like either our utilization sucks, or we haven't been trained properly on what's happening, like how to utilize that software, or we picked the wrong software.
Or it could be A, B, or C, or none of the above. What we found is that, oftentimes people think that software is going to be a magic bullet, but, it's really not. It's just one piece of a very complicated puzzle that, yes, we love our technology and it makes our life better, but without the right people, the right job descriptions, the division of responsibilities, and those processes, you're only going to be so efficient.
Yeah, I think it's a good point too. Some of it is just accountability of utilizing the systems, because I've got to tell you, that what happens a lot of times is we as executives, we implement software and we say this is going to solve all of our problems, but then we don't go through proper change management. So we have people that have created their own processes to get the work done. Now we've brought in this level of software and we've said all the reports got to come out of this system. So now they still do the old process, but then they enter data into this new system so that we can get the reports that we want. And we feel like we have utilization when in reality, we don't have anything. Actually, we've made the process even more inefficient because we've added this extra layer of sort of, in there. So I'm really big on accountability. And it's like, look, let's recognize that it's difficult for people to drop everything and change to a new process, but let's come up with some sort of transition period. Let's go through some sort of process review. Let's come back on a regular basis and revisit the accountability on this thing. It's like, hey, we want full utilization by this date. Let's work towards that. Let's do it systematically. Let's not pull the rug out from underneath everybody on day one. We've all been in companies like that. They make a change and they're like, February 1st, we're moving to this new system. And then the whole business is in just chaos for 30 days. So I think it's really important. And it's important to have a third party that does that. I don't believe you can, you can really do your own. You have to have somebody else that comes in and says, here's what best practices actually look like.
Yeah, that's why people hire consultants. For one, it's really time consuming work, as you well know. And it is that outside perspective is really invaluable when it comes to taking an objective look at a process. Yeah. And figuring out, hey, what are you doing and why are you doing it? Oftentimes people, you ask them why you do something. Well, because John told me that's how it's done. And then you go to John and John will say, well, why do we do it that way? And John will say, well, Mary said that. And you get to Mary and she'll answer, I don't know why we do it that way. So
it's so true. And processes are like snowballs rolling downhill. Right. It starts out as one thing. And I've given this analogy before, and I think it's so relevant. It's like what we tend to do is something comes up. Let's say we ship a product, and every day we ship this product 7 days a week. And then all of a sudden one gets lost. And it creates just chaos in the whole organization. So we create some sort of new modification to the process so that never happens again. And every time I hear people talk that way, I say, wait a second, how often did this actually happen in the first place? Mm-hmm. Well, it only happened one time last year. So you're saying we've completely changed the entire process, the way we do all of the work inside this business for something that happens one time a year. Mm-hmm. When instead the process really should be the 999 times it actually goes right. Yeah, there's always going to be that deviation that falls outside the system. Mm-hmm. But we tend to create these systems that we want them to be bulletproof, when it's okay if an occasional bullet flies through, as long as it doesn't hit anything vital.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Well, good stuff. Hey, thank you for being on this. Kelly, how do people find out more about OnTraxis? What's your website?
Our website is www.ontraxis.com if you want to learn more.
Sounds good. Hey, well, thanks for joining me here today.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah.